Good morning, it's Shanna. This week I want to talk about something that I have mentioned over and over and over here on my channel. And that is my second first deck. That is the deck that I came back to tarot with. It's the deck I purchased after walking away from tarot and essentially not practicing for, I want to say 20 some odd years. So I thought I would make it a hashtag because I want to know. I know there's so many of us that have, mentioned it on their own channels or in comments or just on Instagram, just offhandedly, that for so many of us, we used tarot for a long time or for a short time. And then for whatever reason, we put it away, we walked away from it. And there are a lot of different reasons that I've heard. And then somehow we found our way back to tarot. And I would love to hear your story. I want to know what deck it was that you came back, to tarot with. Why did you come back to tarot? What made you walk away from tarot? How has your practice changed between now and when you first started? I want to know all of the things. So if you want to join me, I would love to hear your second first deck story. So without getting into or over explaining myself, let's just get into this deck. It's a deck everyone has seen before. I feel like, although it's not a very popular deck, I don't think. That is the Paulina Tarot by Paulina Cassidy. She has a lot of different decks. I actually have all of them because I really enjoy her artwork. I'm just going to zoom in all the way here. And I love her decks. And I feel like each one has a very unique energy. Although I will say, full being completely honest, her last deck, the Magic Makers, I'm just not really that into. But I have it anyway because I have all her other decks. But it just feels a little samey to me. But the other ones feel very unique and they each have their own individual voice. But we're talking about the Paulina Tarot today. And what made me walk away from tarot in the first place? And when did I start tarot? So I started playing with tarot cards when I want to say I was probably 16. Because I'm fairly certain, I know that I bought the deck when I was 16, which is the Mythic Tarot, by the way, that original Mythic Tarot. I bought it from Barnes & Noble, and I also bought the Karma cards. I'll put an image on the screen. They've been around for forever. They're still available to buy. I just saw them in Barnes & Noble last time I was in there. It just makes me laugh. But yeah, I got the Mythic Tarot, and I bought the Karma cards, and I just started playing with them. I had no idea what I was doing. I did not know the meanings of the cards. I feel like I got into tarot because of TV shows, right? Like Charmed, probably, what else was playing at the time? Buffy was probably a thing. I'm not sure the timelines of all of these shows, but just the idea of witchcraft in general and the idea of Wicca, like, in the 90s, Wicca was a big thing and it was kind of like all the cool kids were Wiccan, right? So that's what I thought I wanted to do and get into, and I thought tarot was kind of an easy way to get into it. So I bought my first deck. Like I said, I was probably 16. I feel like I drove myself there. And I brought the decks home. I'm pretty sure I bought them together, the two of them. And I just started playing with them. Of course, the Tower card, the Devil card, the Death card, the Ten of Swords, all of those classic spooky cards that, when you don't know tarot, those are like the kind of the triggery kind of cards. Speaking of death, I do remember being a little freaked out by them, but I also remember reading the guidebook and being like, oh, it's not really that scary, which, to be honest, at 16, it was a little disappointing. I thought, oh, this is kind of actually not that out there. It's not that scary or spooky, or, it's not telling me that I'm going to die. The Hanged Man, I remember, was another one that I thought was kind of a scary card. But I just remember playing with them, I remember pulling out there was a cloth that came with the Mythic Tarot that had the Celtic cross on it. So I remember doing that a few times and just like poring over the book, just like reading all the things, right? And I'm sure that my readings probably had to do with my boyfriend at the time, because it was always drama with the two of us, as it tends to be when you're 16. But I wasn't really that into it. Like, it was fun, but I wasn't super into it. But I liked having it. And I do remember doing a couple readings for some friends. I say some. I probably did it for 2 friends. Although, to be fair, I didn't have a lot of friends, but that's another topic for another time, or not. But I remember just no one was really that excited about tarot. Like, everyone was a little wary of it. No one really knew what the cards meant, or what it meant when you got a certain card, or what it meant, just the fact that they were using it. Like, I think a lot of people were uncomfortable just being in the same room with a tarot deck was really not looked at favorably. So I feel like once that sort of phase passed for me, I got married, my husband and I moved out, we got our own house, and I had this tarot deck. I moved with this tarot deck and the oracle cards. My tarot deck I had wrapped it in the cloth that it came with. And I put that inside a velvet bag that I asked my mom to make. And then I put that inside a wooden box. It was all very like ritualistic, right? It felt very special, and it felt, I don't really want to say powerful necessarily, because I don't really feel like I practiced a lot of magic-esque kind of things back then. But I do remember I had a candle magic book, which I've looked on Amazon and like used book sites to see if I could remember which book it was, but I don't know. I don't remember enough about the cover of it to really be able to tell which book it was to be able to get it again, which is unfortunate, but that's okay. So once my husband and I got married and we moved a few times. So, a couple of years went by. And I believe we had our first daughter by this point. And my husband grew up, we both grew, we went to high school together. So we grew up in Utah. It's very religious. I'm sure a lot has changed since we've lived there, because we don't live there anymore. But where he grew up, very religious, he sat me down one day, and it was a very serious conversation. And he told me that he was uncomfortable with me using tarot. And by this point, I had created a grimoire. I was fully invested in the idea of becoming Wiccan. And so I had this grimoire, and I was like printing out spells and like rituals and just all the things, right? And I kept all of these things in my journal. And he just decided one day that he was not okay with that. And for all the reasons, I decided his feelings, how do I word this right? I guess at the end of the day, I decided to honor his concerns, and I put all of those things away. I packed everything up. I packed up my tarot and the grimoire, and I stopped researching because, this was early-ish. This was pretty early internet. So I put away all of the things that I had researched, and I put away all my candles, all the witchy things. And I won't even say witchy, I'll say Wiccan things, because I don't think witch was really a word I would have used to describe what it was I was trying to accomplish, but Wiccan definitely was. So I put all of that away, and I kept it put away for probably, let's see, that would have been 98-ish. And I went through my Marie Kondo phase, I want to say in 2015-ish. So like 17 years, give or take. I kept it put away. I had it in a chest. I didn't pull it out. I wasn't interested. I was, a mom and busy, and life, gets in the way of things that you don't intentionally put time toward. So I once, like I said, I went through a Marie Kondo phase. We went through all the things that didn't bring me joy, that I hadn't pulled out in years. And I unfortunately donated all of my things. I believe at some point prior to that, I had gotten rid of my grimoire. I don't recall what I did with it. Which that I think more so than the tarot is a disappointment, because there was so much in that I had researched and printed and written down and all the things that interested me. So that would have been fun to go through at this point, but that's okay. It is what it is. So fast forward, so if that was 2015-ish, fast forward to 2021, the pandemic was still going on, and we were out of lockdown, but I decided I needed to get a job. I hadn't had a job in a very long time. I was a stay-at-home mom through most of my children's lives, and we moved here to Oregon, and the pandemic was it wasn't over, but people were getting out again. Everyone was still masked up. Everyone was still very cautious, but I decided it was time to get a job. So I went to this place, and during the interview, I believe it was like the third interview, they gave me a tour of the facility, and one of the things that I noticed was that they sold tarot decks. They had a handful of tarot decks there. And I asked, I was like, oh, I didn't, do you guys sell these? Is this your stock? Do you usually have more? I asked all the questions. I was just like immediately excited. And they were like, yeah, we sell them. The person who usually brings them in, that person is the person you'll be replacing. So, I asked, is that something I would be able to order? And they were like, yeah, eventually once, if you get the job and once you have experience and you know what to do, all the things, then yeah, that can be something that you can potentially do. Fast forward, I got the job, I started ordering these decks, and it wasn't very long before I saw this deck. And I'll be honest, I don't know if the deck was already there when I started the job, or if it was one that maybe I asked to bring in. I don't remember. But I was drawn to this one, and I looked at it for a few weeks. Like every day that I went to work, I looked at it and I was like, man, it's so pretty. And, I asked myself, is this something I want to get back into? What would my husband think? Do I care what he thinks? Like, obviously I cared what he thinks, but as adults, there comes a point in our lives where we have to make the decision of, do we do the thing because we really want to? And are we okay with dealing with those consequences? Or do we honor our partner's feelings about whatever it is we're trying to explore? Like, there's a whole host of variations on how to navigate something like that. And at the end of the day, I decided I wanted to bring a new tarot deck home, and that was this Paulina deck, and I call it my first deck because that initiated everything that I have built and cultivated and practiced ever since then. So it didn't start, the deck itself didn't start with the idea that I wanted to explore witchcraft, but it definitely kickstarted it, because looking back at my journals, it was just a matter of months between when I brought the deck home and I did my first reading, and when I really started to cultivate the idea of wanting to get back into practicing some kind of metaphysical type thing, right? Like I don't know that I had a name for it necessarily at that point, but I think especially with social media, witchcraft was a natural next step, and I just fell head over heels in love with it. It came very naturally to me. It felt very right. It didn't feel, I really didn't get any pushback from my husband, which was great. And then I want to say probably 2 years into all of this, there was one day where he brought up the idea of, I don't know, we were talking about witches or something, like very vague. The memory's a little fuzzy. But he looked at me, and with a straight face, he said, well, isn't that what you call yourself? Aren't you a witch? And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, he not only seems okay with that, but acknowledges it and is casual about it. And that was the end for me. Like I was all in at that point. So yeah, like this deck just really brought me back into who I am and who I kind of always wanted to be, but maybe partially, I didn't have time. I had little kids. There were other things I was focusing on. And it just wasn't the right time for my husband to be comfortable with me exploring this. And so in a way, it was just this new chapter of not just for me, but for the two of us as a couple. Like, now he tells people at work, like, yeah, my wife's a witch. She practices witchcraft. She does tarot. And I don't know, it's really cool. It feels very liberating. And it's nice to know that I can just do this stuff. Like, I don't have to, it's not a secret that I keep in a book closed up somewhere under my bed, right? Like, I have an altar, I have skulls and candles, I have herbs, I have crystals, I have like spells that I leave laying around. I have moon water that I put out on a full moon. And then, I go out and pick it up in the morning when he's sitting there looking at his phone. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm getting my moon water. Don't worry about it. So it's just, I don't know. It's this really cool experience. And I hope that whoever's trying to explore witchcraft or whatever spiritual realm that they're trying to get into, whatever level, whatever title it is, I wish for them that their person feels as open to the idea of it as my husband did, because like I said, he was not at all at first. But that's my story. That's my first deck story. And I just, I haven't looked back since. This is a very special deck. This is one I will not ever get rid of. I have since purchased a copy of my first deck, which was, again, it was the Mythic Tarot. I have a copy of that. I actually have two copies because when I bought the replacement deck, I trimmed it, which is fine. But then I kind of regret it. I'm like, you've still kind of ruined the whole thing. You still kind of changed up the deck. So I do have an untrimmed version of my very first deck. But this one is special because this one was my stepping stone into witchcraft and honoring who I am and who I want to become and just fully embracing this kind of second half of my life, which, to some people, they might go, oh, it's your midlife crisis or whatever. Call it what you will. I'm happy and I feel comfortable in it, and I feel secure in the knowledge that I feel like I am where I'm supposed to be. So I think that's all I have to say. I have been wanting to put this together for a while, but I just wasn't really sure how to structure it. So today I just hit record and started talking. So again, if you want to share your first deck story, I would love to hear, because I just think it's fascinating to hear how all of us, or so many of us rather, have come back to tarot/witchcraft, but specifically tarot for this video. So comment below if you don't have a channel and you want to share your first deck story. I would love to hear it. So feel free to share. Let's chat. And I don't know if I said it before, but hopefully you guys feel comfortable commenting on other people's comments here on this channel. I welcome that always. So yeah, with that, I think that's all I have. So thank you so much for being here, and I will catch up with you next week.